It's going live.
All right.
Good evening, and welcome to Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, and tonight we are going to be joined by Cheryl Jones. She'll get a chance to introduce herself in just a minute, but if you've been here before, you know we always start off with some deep breathing. Why? Deep breathing allows you to put more oxygen in your brain and more oxygen running through your body. It helps calm you down and just in general feel just a little bit better. Of course, you know how to breathe because you're right here. You're breathing, or you wouldn't, if you weren't breathing, you wouldn't be listening to the show. But we're going to practice 3 deep breaths and hopefully makes you feel a little better. If you've never done this with me before, put your hands on your stomach. And when I say breathe in, you will breathe in so slowly and so deeply, you will feel your stomach expanding because you're letting oxygen go all the way in, filling up the bottom of your lungs, filling up your body. And when I say breathe out, you'll exhale slowly to the count of 4. Let's try it. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully those 3 deep breaths have allowed you to be able to focus from whatever today has brought your way and just be ready to listen tonight. Tonight's topic is therapy is more than just talk. There are so many different forms of therapy. And tonight we're going to find out about music therapy and Reiki. There's music therapy, there's art therapy, there's expressive therapy. There's so many types of therapy. And me being the eclectic therapist that I am, I try to use a little bit of it, study it, and use a little bit of it in what I do. As a matter of fact, in undergrad, my first major was music therapy. And when I left music therapy, had no idea at that moment that I would return to therapy. I was going to do speech therapy. So I guess I was always destined to come into some form of therapy. Our guest tonight is Cheryl Jones. We have known each other since high school. That's a long time, a very long time, but real friendships last a long time. She's the kind of friend we might not talk for a year. And then we get back on the phone, it's like we talked yesterday. But we have to take an hour to catch up because it's been that long. So, it's wonderful to have that kind of friend. And I am really blessed to have friends that are awesome. So a lot of my guests are friends I've known for a long time who have expertise in various areas. So I just say, hey, I think the world needs to know about what you're doing. And when we talk about therapy, I thought, wow, do people really know what music therapy is? And man, so many people have never heard of Reiki, don't know what it is, or have misconceptions about it. So Cheryl is a minister, a music therapist, and a Reiki Master. And she's going to get to tell you how all of that plays together and what she does. So Cheryl, first just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and something really exciting about you or unique about you.
Okay, good evening, Bronwyn Lucas. Good to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Cheryl Jones. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I'm a very proud Texan,
Yeah.
except that I have been on the East Coast in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area since 1989. I came here right out of seminary and been here ever since. But I loved growing up in Houston. I loved our high school, everything about it, and am blessed to still count friends from high school, lifelong friends. So I guess an interesting part of my story is that I'm also a jazz vocalist. And I was ordained in 1988 in Houston at Brentwood Baptist Church. And I always sang. majored in vocal music at high school for performing in visual arts, majored in music therapy. But when I started singing jazz, it was first with the group and then solo. And I struggled with, I'm a minister, ordained Baptist minister. Should I be singing jazz? And God and the Spirit said, look, I gave you this gift and I can speak through all genres of music. So you sing your song. And so that's one of the things that feeds my soul, is to sing jazz and R&B and gospel, but mostly jazz.
She's an awesome jazz artist, I want you to know. Yes,
Thank
awesome.
you.
So as you see, she's multi-talented and multi-dimensional. And tonight we're going to talk, we'll start with music therapy. I'm going to save Reiki for last, man, and let some more people get in here, because that is actually a little more controversial. And you'll get to talk about how being a minister fits with what you do. We'll kind of end with that. But can you just tell people, what is music therapy? And maybe tell us if you have a unique story about how it's really worked. So what is music therapy?
Music therapy is the use of music to achieve therapeutic goals, generally non-musical goals. For instance, physical goals. I worked with burned children in my internship in Galveston, and they needed range of motion, they needed fine motor skills, work on that. And I worked on the interdisciplinary team. And so I might teach them piano. I might have them waving flags to music with rhythm. So they're having fun, but they're also working on their physical goals. So music therapy, generally speaking, is working on non-musical goals for therapeutic benefits. So the story that I always tell, when I knew that music therapy worked, so I had studied, 4 years, and then we had to finish the degree. We had to do a 6-month internship, and mine was in Galveston. And I worked in a children's hospital, a burn hospital, Shriners Burns Hospital, and then a UTMB, just general hospital, but mostly with children. Also Moody State School, and that's where I met some of the children who were recuperating from their burns. Well, I was at the Shriners Burn Hospital one day, and the doctors told me about this little boy, and I'll call him Bobby. He was about 8. And they said, now he doesn't talk much. He had mostly second, but some 3rd-degree burns on his extremities, legs, arms. And so they said, now he's very shy, but maybe you can work with him. So I would carry around a bag of instruments. And I went to Bobby's room, asked if I could come in. He said, especially when he saw the instruments, he said yes. And so I started pulling out instruments, and there were rhythm maracas and bells and things. And so I would play an auto harp, which was like a big guitar, but sitting on my lap. And I would strum it with a pick. And so Bobby said, I can sing some songs. I'm like, great, because I was singing children's songs. So he was singing, he said, I can sing Elvis. And so he started strumming, you ain't nothing but a hound dog. And, I was playing the maracas. We were having a great time. And then he said, I can sing another song. I said, okay, great. So he sang another song. Then he said, I can make up a song. And I said, okay, great. Let me hear it. So he started strumming the auto harp, and then he started singing what happened to him. And he said, I was playing with matches out in the yard. He told me his story. Now, if I had sat and said, Bobby, tell me what happened, as an 8-year-old, 7, 8-year-old, no, he probably wouldn't, but he could sing it. And I said, this works, because the vehicle of music helped him find, first of all, his voice, second of all, the story. He didn't feel embarrassed or uncomfortable telling me through song, and the melody helped him tell his story. And so that's when I realized, yeah, this works. This works.
That is amazing. And that was more therapeutic than talk therapy could have done for him.
Exactly.
If he wasn't at a point I do talk therapy, but I tell you, I use a lot of drawings and other things. I've used, some of the tenets of music therapy because I know how much it benefits everybody. So
Hmm.
yeah, that is amazing and so fulfilling. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
I can see why that would be that aha moment of this works.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that
And
was
we've seen
beautiful.
the YouTube videos of people with Alzheimer's in nursing homes, sitting slumped over in the chair, and then somebody puts on music from their childhood or teenage years, and they perk up. Or the beautiful one where the dancer, former dancer, who's just thin as a rail, very, very elderly, and she hears the Swan Lake music, and she just starts dancing in the chair, and all of the graceful movements. The music stimulates her brain. Music stimulates all of the brain. And especially that memory part of the brain is like it hits right next to that memory. And so that's why we can hear a song from childhood or hear something from teenage years, and we are transported right back to when we were on the dance floor, or when we learned that as a kid, or we may cry because we hear a song. I can't hear Aretha Franklin or anybody sing Nessun Dorma, that classical song that she sang in place of Luciano Pavarotti when he was ill on the Grammys. And she had been studying this classical aria. And I cry every time. It's the
Mhm.
melody, it's the passion and the emotions. And it's so healing. If I don't feel like crying, or if I don't want to go there, I know I don't need to listen to that song. But if I really need to express some emotions, I can't do it by just thinking about it or talking. I will put on some music, and that will
Mhm.
touch my emotions and bring about some healing.
There's so much healing. You talked a little about how music therapy works physiologically. Tell us a little more, just so people understand, because it is, like I said, a form of therapy. It's more than just listening to music. So, what's going on physiologically?
I would say that it's sparking the neurons, the nerve endings, the hormones that bring that happy feeling. Music can stimulate those kinds of cognitive expressions in the brain. And more and more studies show that not just listening to music, but playing music,
Mhm.
singing to music, moving to music can release those endorphins. That's what it is. The endorphins that make you feel good. You know how you feel after a good, dance. You go to a wedding or a party or a cookout, and everybody does the electric slide. Not just physiologically, but socially, it lowers anxiety and stress. It makes you feel a part of things. That's what was so powerful in high school when we were in all these ensembles and groups and we performed. It wasn't just about the performing, but it was about accomplishing a goal and a task and being together with like-minded people and working it out. So all of that, not just brain wise, but socially, spiritually, it can help us reach transformation, I would say, without even really realizing it sometimes.
It forms a sense of community, is a word I would use to describe what you just said. Um, Different people like different genres of music, and so you will connect on that. I was talking to a client uh, last week, and we were talking about music, and using music to make her feel better was what we're talking
Yes.
about. And we will listen to music together in therapy sometimes to when I listen to the music that they like, it lets me know a lot about my clients. What's your favorite song? Oh, okay, I've never heard of them. And so I say, okay, the good thing about online therapy, I say, hold on, because pretty much any song they want is going to be on YouTube. So I
Mhm.
just go to YouTube and we listen to the song together, and I get to look at their reaction too as they hear their favorite song.
Mhm.
Or some people do use music. I need to get a good cry, so I go listen to this. I need to feel good, I listen to that. And I get
Mhm.
to watch their um, reaction. And so I can learn a lot just by listening to music with my clients, and
Exactly.
seeing how they respond. It's very powerful. And I was saying in Texas, we are, most people I know who are Texans have at least one country song they listen to too. We were laughing about that, and the client was like, "Yeah, I like so and so." I say, "Yeah, I know that song." Whether we know some of the artists because it's Texas, but that's okay. It's part of that whole eclectic nature. My ringtone for my sister and I is a Reba McEntire song called "My Sister." Okay,
Oh, that's sweet.
and we actually both found it separately. And she was like, "I got this new ringtone for you. I got this new ringtone for you," and it was the same song. So that was like a wow moment. It was on, one of those sites where you get it. And it's a country song. It's Reba McEntire. You're not gonna get any more country than that. But music, what even past genre, can have engage a lot of feelings. Would you say music therapy is appropriate for all ages? Oh no, looks like she froze. Uh, let me see if I can put in the chat. You froze. And hopefully she can come back. Because she's got so much to say. I'm not sure. She was having, oh no, I will tell you this. She was having some electrical issues. She'll probably try to hop back in at her house. One of the electrical panels went out that controls her refrigerator, her appliances, including her air. And I don't know if and there were people actually working on her house as we speak. Um, so she should be, I'm texting her now. Nothing like, nothing like, something going on. When you're live, anything can happen. So we'll see. We'll see. I will continue though, telling you a little what I do know. As I said, my first major in college was music therapy. And as a therapist, I use music therapy, just in general, what they call expressive arts therapy. Uh, she says her power went out and she's trying to reconnect. So we're going to hang in there but I will let you know just some other ways you can use arts. With expressive arts therapy, that means you're using art, you're using drawing, music, painting, acting. There's psychodrama. It could fall under that. Looks like she's getting back in. So there are all these things you can do. You're back. I was just talking a little about expressive arts therapy in general. Using art, music, dance, all of those are forms of therapy. But getting back, now that you're back, would you say that music therapy is appropriate for any age?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, yes, absolutely. I work with a veterans band. I work at the Department of Veterans Affairs Medical Center, and I started a band with veterans, staff, and community members. And we have members from probably 40 up to in their 70s. And right. So let me get off of. So sorry about
Okay.
that.
We understand when you have to
Okay.
find electricity and
Okay.
challenge. Thanks for staying in there. Okay, I don't
Yes,
see you. There
yes.
you
Okay.
are. Okay.
There I am. Okay, so yes, so the Veterans Band includes Vietnam vets and all the way down to Iraq, Afghanistan vets. And I asked them, we'd sing all genres because I find inspiration in many, many genres. So we sing everything from Prince to Stevie Wonder to Earth, Wind and Fire to Luther Barnes to Yolanda Adams, and they bring the music. Sometimes I will choose music, but I have invited them to bring the music that they want to sing. And I find that they are enlivened. Not only are they pursuing something that they love, music, whether they have done professional, been professionals in music, or just, sang in the church choir or not. But also they some play instruments, but I have the bass player in our group has kind of fooled around with the bass all of his adult life. He's in his 60s, and he is now taking lessons, learning to read music. And it's such a gift of accomplishment, as well as putting together something that's beautiful with a group of people that he enjoys. And we have our issues, every choir, every band has their issues. But all of that is to say, absolutely, from the littlest child, because I took a break from chaplaincy and worked at an elementary school. And so I taught music from pre-K all the way to 6th grade. And I can just see some of the kids dancing, create some of the older kids. We got them guitars and they wrote their own songs. They entered competitions. From the littlest kid on Fridays, I've been thinking about this, we would have all request Friday. So they got to request the music and they would dance. And so this little kindergartner, who's probably 17 now, but everybody wanted to hear Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber, Michael Jackson, those were the top two requests. And so we played a Justin Bieber song. And this was, 15 years, no, a little less than that, many years ago when Justin Bieber was first popular. And so everybody was dancing, bopping to the Justin Bieber song. And this little girl came over and said, "That is not Justin Bieber." And I said, "Yes, it is." So, it was a fun activity for them, but it was also a learning because, before Michael Jackson died, these little kids hadn't heard of Michael Jackson. But, after he died, they wanted to know all about Michael Jackson. And so they saw his excellence in what he did also and learned from that. So, yes, all ages, all ages.
That is awesome. So it's so much you can just learn from that. And like you said, music therapy is a way to work on therapeutic goals and non-therapeutic goals and uplift a person. So it's so much, music is so powerful. I want to switch to Reiki. Reiki is something people don't know about it. So as I told you, Cheryl is a music therapist, an ordained minister, a chaplain, and a Reiki master. What in the world is Reiki?
Okay, so I don't want to get too technical because I want to tell more stories about how I've used it, what the benefits of particularly veterans. Now that I work with veterans, we've used it with veterans. But the history of Reiki, first of all, Reiki is a Japanese term. Rei is the divine, the spirit, spirituality, higher order, divine. And ki or chi, you've probably heard of chi, but ki is life force and energy. So it's divine life force or life energy. And in the 1800s, now, first of all, it's a laying on of hands for healing, for stress relief. And we know laying on of hands is an ancient form of healing. And we know Jesus laid hands and taught the disciples to, heal with the laying on of hands. Well, in this little village in 1865, and I'm reading here, Dr. Usui from Japan, in the little village in Japan, wanted to practice this ancient form of healing. And so he started studying, he studied Christianity, he studied Zen Buddhism, and he, using the energy centers in the body called the chakras, those are the energy centers from the head, the forehead, which they call the third eye, the heart chakra. These are all chakras, the root chakra, all the way down to the feet. There's energy flowing through our bodies, physical energy. And using the hands after they've been attuned, you can affect the energy and help people find relaxation and de-stress just by the practitioner, either laying hands on the forehead, for instance, or just right above. And people report, and then you can, using your energy along with the person that you're working on, you can kind of spiritually realize where they need more energy. So it's non-invasive, it's very gentle. Again, sometimes you don't even touch, you just write over, and it brings a sense of calm, relaxation, de-stress. Some people report having visions, or imagining themselves in gardens or very pleasurable kinds of spaces. Some people work things out as they're laying, and either the person receiving Reiki can either lie prone or sit up. And I've done many chair Reiki where I'm just working on the head and shoulders. So for instance, with the veterans, we have an integrative health and wellness program unit. And before the pandemic, twice a week, we would invite, and I would just help as a chaplain. I would help because I was a Reiki master. And we'd invite people to sign up for an hour of Reiki. And there'd be maybe 16 people in the room. And these are mostly men, mostly Vietnam veterans. But again, we had veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict. They would chomp at the bit to get in that room. And me and the other practitioners would just go about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on how many people we had. And we would just work from the top, the head, wisdom, third eye, and then the shoulders and the heart chakra. And that's all. They would just be sitting up, and they reported not only, relaxation, some to the point they would fall asleep. But they were with other veterans. And so they, had that in common. And they reported a sense of calm, a sense of peace, a sense of serenity. And these are mostly men, like I said, but some women, veterans, with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health issues, physical issues. Some people would come in wheelchairs, and we'd make space for them. And this was twice a week. And those spaces would fill up every time. There was never anyone who said, I don't feel anything. Everybody felt something. And also the energy in the room was shared as well. So, we are beings full of energy. We're energetic beings, spiritual beings, as well as physical beings.
And, I want to share two things. First, let me talk about energy for a second. Sometimes when you say that, people really bristle at that. But I like to describe it this way. Think about a time when you went into a room and it was a birthday party and it was a good friend and there was just good energy and you were so excited to be there. You felt excitement just walking in. You could feel the energy in the room. Think about a time, and I'm sure everybody's had this experience, you walked in and people had been arguing and they stop when you get there, but the looks on their faces, you feel the heaviness in that room and you really want to leave. That's it. That's what we mean when we say energy that you can feel. You literally can feel the energy that a person is giving off. If someone's arguing and they're in a deep argument, you feel it. You say, ooh, y'all all right? Yeah, we fine. Okay. Or just walking into that birthday party, a wedding, or something that's happy, you feel good when you're there because the energy in the room, it's just a light, good or bad. So we do feel that. So when we talk about Reiki and energy, we all do it. You have that energy. And it's inside of us and it's going to radiate. Like I say, whatever you're doing, you're going to radiate it to those around you, whether it's good or bad. But I first came to know about Reiki when Cheryl was actually my younger sister who passed away, lived in DC, and Cheryl lives there, well, in the DC area as well. And, like I say, our families have known each other since we were in 10th grade. And so she knew my younger sister as well, who was going through cancer treatments and just having, going through cancer is not fun. And it has lots of issues with it. Well, my sister's, one of her oncologists and in their hospital, they recommended Reiki. And she found out Cheryl was doing Reiki. She was like, guess what? You remember Cheryl? She does Reiki. I'm doing Reiki. She was so excited to know that she would be able to not only receive Reiki, but it would be someone she's known since she was a kid.
Yeah.
Because she's 6 years younger than us. So, she was a little one under us. So this was someone she's known feeling like forever. So Cheryl would go to her house. Nita would leave the door open, unlocked, so she could come in, and she would do Reiki, and Nita would inevitably fall asleep, and Cheryl would just leave. But it was that sense of comfort. I would know when it was her Reiki day. She would tell me she would feel so good just having, just the experience of Reiki, but also someone you knew and that personal connection. And so every time, I just want to say thank you again for bringing her that peace and that comfort during that time. And it was such a sense of calm, peace, comfort, the energy that she was projecting. And so, she was in pain, she was this, and sometimes that would be the best sleep she had that week. Mm. Because it's if you know anybody who's gone through chemo, even sleep can be difficult because you're in pain or you just don't feel good, overall, that general malaise, you're not doing well because of the chemo treatments. So it's very, very powerful.
Very powerful. And I also, the practitioner gets energy from the person as well. And so we are transferring energy. And Nita was such an enlivened, vibrant force, even when she was sick. And since her death, anytime I meet somebody from Metropolitan, they always know Nita. And talk about her life force. So she already had the life force, even though it was hampered by cancer. Some things are not taken away from with an illness, and she still had that. We would laugh, and before her treatments, and I would walk away feeling better as well. So, another way to talk about energy is that vibe. We talk about, yeah, she got that vibe. We all got that vibe. And some people's energy is more palpable. And Nita's was very palpable. She could walk in a room and she'd light it up. And so that all of that energy and the transference that I did while she was sick, that also helped her. That's what was at work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That positive space was already there. When a lot of people hear about Reiki, they feel it is anti-Christian, anti-God. Then you are a minister, a woman of God. What do you say to people who feel Reiki is evil? It's of the devil.
As we talked about it earlier, I would just say, just try it. Let me just give you about 5 minutes and see if you feel anything. And I will take them back to the healing that Jesus did with the laying on of hands. It's just, it's just a laying on of hands from someone who's been attuned, and there are symbols used, but it's only to bring in forward the energy. And you don't have to use the symbols, but I would just tell someone of faith, God works, first of all, God works in mysterious ways. God lives beyond the scriptures and the Bible. God is not locked in this book of scriptures. And God has given us all kinds of ways to choose life. And this is just another life-giving, healing force that we can utilize. And I've had, at the VA, it's mostly Black people, and most Black people are religious or, grew up in the church, whether they're, of all different faiths. African people are the most spiritual, in the world. But I have never had, particularly when they have experienced it or they know someone who has, I've never had, in the 8 years I've been back at the VA, never had a veteran say, this is of the devil. Now, maybe I wouldn't meet them. Maybe they wouldn't come up to the chaplain and say that, but I just have ministers. I can think of a woman who's an elder in her church who loved Reiki. I can think of many, many Christian people and religious people who have felt and received the benefits of Reiki. And because we had to stop during the pandemic, I had a veteran call me and say, where can I get Reiki? You know, because if you stop and you already have felt the benefits and then you have to stop because of the pandemic, she wanted to know who outside of the VA can give me Reiki. And I did point her to someone actually in my neighborhood who does Reiki, an African American veteran. So I don't get a lot of pushback, but I would say that if people are concerned about it, read about it and get a session, even if it's just 10 minutes with someone you trust. There are many ministers who are Reiki masters, many chaplains. In fact, as I was telling you earlier, the way I learned about it was as a chaplain, the priest and the nun who were on staff invited chaplains to come and experience this form of healing. And so we took a Saturday and they taught us, all of the symbols and the ways. And they were the first, this priest and this nun were the first to initiate and introduce me to Reiki.
And I was just about to ask you how you did get into this, share with us. And that's amazing. And a lot of times people have God in a box, and we don't understand that there is so much more than the little box we put him in.
Yeah.
Reiki can really take you out of there. Like I said, for me, that was I had seen it before, seen the word before, had no idea. And when I saw how much it benefited my sister, then I had to know more about it, and I went to study. Because it's amazing, and so I was at a retreat for cancer patients and caregivers. I had phoned up to DC. We were somewhere in Virginia. I don't remember the town because I don't remember, but and that was the first time I experienced Reiki. Because they were doing things for the caregivers. The focus was on the patient, but there was still a lot of focus on the caregivers. And I had an opportunity to go. My sister and I would fly back and forth to visit her. 1 month was her month, and then it was my month. And I remember I had to take a month break because being a mom, I had to stay home. My child didn't do well when mom went to take care of sister who was ill. I think his worry got in the way. So I ended up waiting a while. So it was finally my turn to go back. And it happened to be on this caregiver weekend. And they had Reiki for anyone there who wanted. And she was like, you got to go. I won't take a turn just in case, so you can experience this. And I honestly, if you ask me to describe it, I can't, other than to say there was this beautiful sense of peace you felt. I was one of those about to fall asleep on the table, but it's like, baby, you got to get up. We got a whole lot of people after you. Come on, take that feeling outside the room. But yeah, it was that type of feeling, a real sense of calmness. And that was not a time of calm. At that retreat, it was, in a sense, it was stressful. You're there with other caregivers and cancer patients, and you knew that in the next month, somebody in that room wouldn't be alive. So that was always in the back of your head. So to come to a space where you could be calm and at peace was amazing. Because right before that was a session for just the caregivers. And if you know me, those of you who know me, I'm not a crier. So if I'm sitting in the room crying, oh Lord, what were they talking about? So to come from that, to go to a Reiki session and be able to find that peace was amazing. Was truly amazing. What else how do you divide your time? How does it all play together, being a minister, a vocalist, a music therapist, and a Reiki master? How does this work with work? How do you balance all of that?
That's a great question. I am very blessed to have a chief of chaplains who is very visionary, very forward thinking, and thinks outside of the traditional lines of what a chaplain does. And so when I was hired back I've been at the VA off and on since 2003, but in 2014, and then I took a time out of chaplaincy and taught music for 11 years. But in 2014, I was called back to be the chaplain of a particular grant funded program. and with veterans with diabetes. And so I thought, well, let's see, we can talk about spirituality. And I came up with a um, questionnaire. But I thought, let's do something. So I said, let me teach them basic piano and basic guitar, just as, because I know I'm a music therapist. I know the benefits of music. And so I would offer that, and a lot of people took me up on it. And I found that through, I wasn't just teaching piano, it was the music therapy, because first of all, they were veterans, and veterans of all ages. They were fulfilling maybe a childhood dream, or I picked up an instrument, but I put it down and life got in the way. So they were fulfilling, self-actualization. But they also, again, they would tell me their stories while we're sitting at the piano or sitting, I remember a veteran whose music teacher in high school was Roberta Flack. And so,
Wow.
yes. So we laughed and talked. She said, we thought her voice sounded horrible and we would just laugh. She was in junior high. She said, we would just laugh and tease. And she said, and then she became Roberta Flack. And so she said, as an adult, she would go to her shows and Miss Flack remembered her. And so she realized that, gosh, I really missed out on an opportunity to really learn music. So she started taking piano.
Mm.
And some people were better than others, and she was okay. But she started telling me about her life and her son who was murdered, in his young adulthood. And, so we would work things out while I was teaching them piano. And again, all those years later, music works. So my chief really endorsed what I was doing. She didn't understand it necessarily, but she saw the benefit of these. First of all, veterans were just streaming into chaplain service, streaming in piano, guitar, and then I started a choir, and then, and we've gone on since then. So we have attracted people who may not have come to the chaplain's office or sought out spirituality. We've expanded people's ideas of, there's religion, which, the traditions that you follow. And then there's spirituality, which includes music and nature. And so we've broadened people's definition of what spirituality is, and just help them find ways to say, oh, I am a spiritual being. I can be healed of these traumas. And music, writing, art, all of those therapies can help me. And so during the pandemic, I started a women's book club. And so we were reading other people's works, and now they're writing. We had a writing workshop. I continued with the band, even though we couldn't rehearse together sometimes, but continued meeting with them virtually. I have a post-COVID support group where we use poetry and theological writings to perk, their sense of resilience after, struggle. I mean, these were veterans who got COVID in the beginning days without the vaccine. And so some of them were on ventilators and came very close to death. And so we've been meeting over a year, and we've talked about, like I said, I always start with some poetry or theological writing or a scripture. And I've seen transformation just from people telling their stories. Maya Angelou said, one of the worst things is to have an unspoken story that's burdening you. And so music is just another vehicle for people to tell their stories. And so I mix it all in. Now, when I was a younger chaplain, because I went into chaplaincy as an intern in campus ministry right after college. And so I had these musical gifts, but I was a little too shy to say, well, let me sing a hymn by the bed. But now in my 60s, I'm no longer shy. And I have learned to use everything that God has given me, because God can use everything that God gives. And it may not fit in a traditional box, but it's useful for God's people. And so, if you sing, sing. I had a jazz teacher who said, if you feel bad, sing. If you feel good, sing. If you feel depressed, sing. Sing. It's beneficial. Even if you don't feel like you can sing, but just getting that song, that story, that voice
Make a
out there.
joyful noise
That's right.
unto the Lord,
That's right. Play
Yeah.
the harps and the tambourines and the cymbals, and yes, and dance to the
Mhm.
Lord. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, I want to thank you as I look at the clock. And that was a great way to end. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, and as she said, sing, dance, use, as I talked about for a while when she was off, be expressive in whatever art form. It engages a whole different side of your brain than you might be using. And the more of your brain you engage, the better off you are. So there is so much. Take God out of that box you might have him in. Use your artistic abilities. I have taken up painting. I am not an artist, but I have a whole wall of painting, and I would paint and they would just stick. I had them all in the corner. And so my son came in, what are you going to do with those? Oh no. I was just painting for fun. So he has designed my hallway where it's my art gallery.
Beautiful.
Because he said they should be up. I was like, whatever. But I was just doing it. But I now make jewelry. This is my Fitbit watch band. You won't find another like it because I create.
You
So
made that,
yes,
yes.
I made this stuff. Yes. So you
Beautiful.
just get creative and it feels good. So use music, use that creative side that God gave you. We always like to end the show with a call to action. And my call to action, number one point is take God out of the box. Take God out of the box.
And take yourself out of the box.
Yes, take yourself out of the box. Try something new. Number two, there is something creative inside of all of you. It might be music, it might be painting, it might be creating jewelry, whatever. Use that creative side of you. There's therapeutic value in just pouring yourself into something, using the creative side of your brain that might not get used a lot. Do it for the fun of it. And always, if you need therapy, you've seen some other things you can do. Of course, I believe in talk therapy is what I do, but I also believe in using other forms of therapy and incorporate that, as I said, in my practice. Get help if you need help. And I always like to say, vote, 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 be an educated voter. We see things that are happening, you gotta vote. And we're having a show coming up soon from a minister from a church in Houston who has a social justice ministry. We're gonna talk about just that whole political action. And for those who it's your first time, join us. We're here every Thursday at 7. And the show is Black Mental Health is Black Health, because it's my belief that everything impacts our mental health. We don't need to divide spiritual, physical, emotional. Physical is all part of our health. You impact one, you impact the other. So join us 7 o'clock. We look forward to seeing you. And again, Cheryl, thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there a final word you'd like to say?
Oh my goodness, Bronwyn, I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to your audience, to talk to you, see your beautiful face, know that you are still in the healing business yourself. So I commend you, my sister, for all the beautiful work you're doing, and keep on keeping on. And self-care, music is also part of self-care. So I would just encourage everyone to take good care of themselves, and use everything that God has given us in this world to do it.
Thank you again. And to the rest of you, have a wonderful evening. And yeah, practice that self-care. See you next week right here at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. Bye.